G'day everyone, I'm Ross. I'm building a 40-foot composite catamaran out of foam core materials, and I'm up here in the forward starboard main suite of my catamaran here and working on the modules that are going to ultimately form the internal furniture of my catamaran. Now this week, in this episode, I'm going to be working on some areas under here. I'm going to frame it up with composite angle and then put in some shelving, and then later on I'm going to work on the internal partitions of these robes and start to work out the shelving and the hanging space within these robes. Now this has become a very important part of the build because these white modules you see here are actually going to have to be removed out of the boat before I demold the catamaran, and demolding is going to require a crane, lifting points and all these other things. And over the last couple of episodes I've had quite a lot of inquiries about when are you going to demold it, when are you going to do this, when are you going to do that. There's a fair series of logical steps I need to go through prior to demolding this hull, but I do need to lift it out at some point into the near future, and that's going to have to happen without these modules in here. So what I'm trying to do is build all the framework and the shelving and everything into the inside of the boat so that when it comes time for the final fit out, I can simply glue these modules straight in place. Don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe, and certainly I'm really proud to have you guys along, watching along for the ride. So thanks for joining me, and let's get into it. So I just got to thinking, these shelves that I want to put underneath here, they're pretty much going to be exactly the same shape as this. So if I just take a cardboard template, okay, so this will be my first shelf. I'd like it, if possible, if possible, to be here, and then there'd be a second one, probably down about this level. So that it'd be nice if I can intersect it with the bottom of this, where the bulkhead is, because that way I've got at least one with the maximum storage capacity. So this is only going to be a bit rough, but it'll give you the idea. So I've had one shelf level with the base of this here, so this is all going to be tabbed in, so that one will go there, and then the second one will be there. And yeah, so that would work really well. It doesn't give me a lot of room between shelves. I'm basically talking about probably only 6 or 8 inches. Probably 8 inches between that one and that one there. I might even go a little lower. But that's actually not too bad. Pretty good. So that gives me maximum storage and leaves underneath here free for conduiting of electrical items and basically some of my water runs as well. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good solution, that. Okay, so this will give you a rough idea. Yeah, it's bloody rough, but it'll do. Okay, so this is what the structure is going to look like underneath. I can't put one along the bottom of here because it's actually not vertical, but the rest of these are vertical. The shelves will sit in place like this, and basically they'll be, the composite angle is going to be epoxied in, and I'm going to tidy all the joints up to make it all nice and neat. And then what I'll do is I'll fillet and tab the top, and just tidy up underneath and sand it back, and then basically it'll just be flow coated. So what you'll see from underneath is the brackets here. I may even tab them, I'm not sure yet, depending on how neat I can make them look without having to do that. Now that I've got this all screwed in place, I'm going to remove it and I'm going to glue it on with the epoxy, and then I'll be able to remove the screws, and then I'll ultimately be able to put the shelving back on and tab it in place and leave these here. I may have to tidy up underneath them, because when you look underneath the shelf you might see the edge of this. I'm thinking I may even tab this back to the actual shelf itself and try to get a bit of a smooth radius underneath the shelf. And nothing worse than digging your hand in and hitting a piece of glass, and I want to try to tidy it up before I go either paint or flow coat these cabinets out. But, you know. Now, before I can glue all these in, I need to prepare all this. I need to sand basically everywhere where this is going to be glued on. Okay, now that I've got all my lines, you wouldn't have a clue what I'm doing here, and neither would I, to be honest. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a quick sand, and then I'll give it a quick clean, and basically glue all these parts in place. And then tomorrow I'll be able to come in and start tabbing these shelves in place. Alright, so this Techniglue, I've just given this a really good clean with the denatured alcohol that I use, the methylated spirits, and I find that's a good way of cleaning without dissolving the substrate. And then I'm basically going to just simply screw these back exactly how I had them, and making sure that I fill the holes in the woodwork that I've created. And that's it, all glued in. So tomorrow I'll be able to come back and remove all those screws, and then I'm going to make a couple of little tidy up cleats to go in here to make it all solid and structural, and then I'll be able to put my shelving in. But yeah, that's worked out really nicely. It's pretty simple. Obviously I want to make it look as good as possible and have it nice and clean inside, so there'll be some subsequent tabbing, I'd imagine, underneath. Certainly on the top where the shelf fits, it will be tabbed down to the shelf from above, all the way around like I've done up here. We'll use some lighter weight cloth to do that, but you know, it should be a nice way to get a beautiful radius there, so that all of my shelving is very easy to clean. There's no chance of any mold or grit or anything falling down in behind my shelves. It'll all become part of the structure, and essentially move forward. But yep, that's basically a job done there, and tomorrow I can move forward with putting the shelving in. So I've mentioned it quite a few times, the entire inside of this boat, apart from the main forward, centre and smaller rear bulkheads, are going to be made out of foam. They're going to be plywood, those ones, but everything else I intend to be foam. So obviously I've got a wooden bulkhead here, and this main dogleg here is actually plywood. Now that's for the compression strength. Smaller partitions such as inside wardrobes and the like are all going to be foam. That's another way of keeping the weight out of this boat. So what I was able to do was use this template here to do this partition right here, as you can see down this black line here, which is actually the inside of my wardrobe in the main suite. So I've cut this piece of foam here, and this section here will be a hanging road. This side here will be shelving. Everything made out of foam, all tabbed in, lasting and solid and part of the internal structure of the boat. Will actually reinforce the sides. It'll also assist in giving me, a really lightweight structure that's basically rot-proof, maintenance-free, which is what I want in this boat. I'm just getting the structure together. Basically, this piece, I'll put a couple of these bits of angle, just tack them in with a couple of self-tappers, really small ones, and then I'm able to position everything exactly where I need it. This module now should just fit straight over the top and form the basis of a pretty strong structure once it goes in place. You can see here, using that template there, I was able to derive this one. So the things are speeding up here on the hulls. This will be tabbed in. And now I've got 2 compartments in this wardrobe. Had a big discussion with Janet about how we're gonna outfit this wardrobe in the master suite. We came to the conclusion that we'd be better off having shelving in this one and a hanging robe in this one, in that to access these shelves here, this door always has to be closed, and generally when you're getting changed in your nutty and you step out of the head into this room, you're going to have that door shut unless you want to give the shock to the rest of your crew members. But we ultimately think that this one's going to be used a lot less, therefore it'd remain shut more often, and this one here would allow more room for access in and out of the room, inside the cabin here. So what I'm doing is I'm just working out the shelves here. I've got a 30 centimetre shelf height, and we'll get 3 shelves in here, plus the top one. Plus down in the bottom there, I'm leaving room for my water pumps. So there's plenty of stuff going on here, and these are pretty simple, and I'm going to get them in the next few days, and then can basically move on. And it's just sort of concentrating in this area here, putting in all of this sort of shelving here is really giving me a good feel for how I can do the rest of the boat. I'm taking my time. It's been a pretty long drawn out process, and a lot of spirit levels and a lot of laser level in getting these levels right. But ultimately I think once they're in, I'm going to have to I'm going to have a bit of a method to work right through into here, into the freezer room, and then into that back robe as well. So things are moving pretty fast, but although I am slowing up a little bit here to get this intricate detail right, and we're trying to think about the intended use of the boat as well. So plenty going on. I'm going to get on with it. Now it's times like these when you're just reaching for a piece of laminated foam where you realise the payoff for doing the bulk laminating that I did back in January, where I laid up I believe about 10 or 12 sheets. I can't even remember, because I've now almost used all of them in all the petitions and things that I've been making. This is really a good lesson for anyone that's taking on a project like this. Bulk work makes a massive difference to your time going forward. I would have had to go up into the factory and set up my gun system, change resins, and certainly get cut cloth, etc., and I wouldn't have been able to get these shelves done as quick as I did. So where you're slowing up in some respects, bulk laminating, you're actually picking up in other respects. So certainly well worth considering if you take on a project of this scale. I think one of the best investments I've ever made in my life is our track saw. I bought a Craig track, it's called an AccuCut track saw. Basically the track itself fits any power saw. I considered buying a nice track saw with a brand, but at the end of the day I was able to modify any saw to fit that system. I think it's pretty clear that I have a love affair with this composite angle. Basically, it's so simple to use. Now, I learned a couple of lessons doing these shelves in the forward compartment. I'm actually using it to support the shelf Here you can see me actually screwing it in place, and then I'm going to dismantle it a bit later on and then glue it all in place, and then I'll ultimately laminate over. I learnt later on as I was doing the stern cabin that it was a little bit of overkill, and to be honest, you can do it with simply a hot glue gun, then tab and fill it over the top and make it a lot easier on yourself. So what I've decided, I'm going to put a shelf in this small section here, which is going to allow for access in through a wardrobe in through this module here. But what I've decided, I was originally going to just hang a shelf here and sort of attach it to the module itself, but there's not a lot of fixing points. So what I've decided to do is use a small bulkhead in here, glass that in, tab it in, and then I'll be able to put the shelves, probably a second one possibly in there as well. But that bulkhead there, funnily enough, that template there matches the exact profile of this with the exception of the foam. So I've used the template I used for this bulkhead. I've got it out of my factory there and put it in here, and then added some cardboard to fill in all of these areas here and then be able to get a good snug and concise fit there. And I'll make that out of foam, tab it in place, and then that'll give me another piece of this jigsaw puzzle. So what I could have done, I could have used a toggle stick to derive this, but it's simpler to use the existing template that I already have. And what I was able to do using that shape making jig that I have, I was able to then form these pieces of cardboard along here and make this particular jig here. Now laying it over the top, it's very hard to determine where this right angle is here. So what I've then done is I've drilled a hole in there, I've marked it here, I've drilled a small hole in here, and I'm then able to get this correct angle all the way down to this point here. So pretty simple stuff, but you know, you just got to do it. You got to think on your toes all the time. A couple of bits of cardboard, 10 minutes work. I've got a very concise and perfect template for this particular bulkhead. So as I wind this episode up, guys, I just want to let you know that I'm actually enjoying a little bit of a change of pace here. Rather than doing bulk work, I'm doing some nicer, smaller, sort of more intricate, more detailed work, and that's actually a really nice change of pace for me. I've totally enjoyed the last few weeks where I've been working in the forward and stern cabins of the boat. Just want to thank you all for watching. It's had a huge response over the last couple of weeks. I guess it's partly due to the fact that everybody's locked down. I'm watching lots of YouTube, and I want to thank my patrons for supporting me. Honestly, I couldn't do it without you guys. And don't forget the Composite Shop video series as well. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you next time on Life on the Hulls.